What's up, guys? My NFL video for week 18 is up. Got two plays in there, although the lines have kind of moved away from those already and kind of through the key numbers of three. So, unfortunately, week 18, we see a lot of line movement like that, especially on some of the games you actually might want to get on a little bit early. So, it's kind of unfortunate, but hopefully, there's some good info in that video still. Yesterday, 1-2, not good at all. Buffalo Sabres were an easy win, and the other two games sucked. Jacksonville in college basketball, they definitely suck. I thought it was just such a monumental letdown spot for Florida Gulf Coast that I had to do it, but it just did not get there. And the other hockey play did not get there either. Arizona Coyotes, that was a loss as well. I don't think it was quite as bad as the final score looked, but it was not good. So we got to move on from that. We move on to today. There's a pretty short card today in college basketball, so I won't be on anything in college basketball. Everybody's going to be tuning into, well, I guess the two big games are UConn at Butler. UConn down from 6.5 to 6 on the road at Butler. The line, I guess, maybe looks kind of suspicious because does it look too easy to take UConn only laying 6 as one of the top ranked teams in the country at Butler? I don't know. Butler's been playing pretty well, but there isn't really a situational aspect of this that makes me want to get involved. So it should be a good game, though, hopefully. And then the biggest game is Illinois at Purdue. Everybody's eyes are going to be on that. Purdue up from 9 to 10.5. Line kind of getting out of control. I think KenPom has this line at lower than 9, I think around 8. So I don't know why the line seems to be moving against that, moving up against where I would expect the numbers guys to be on that. But Illinois is coming off a massive blowout win over Northwestern, and Purdue didn't look as good going into Maryland, but that's a tough spot going into Maryland, and Purdue still won and covered that game. So I don't know. Purdue is the better team here, and the line is telling you they are. So I would kind of lean to Purdue in this one just because even though the line is way too high now at 10.5, there's no way I would do that. It's up from 9 to 10.5. I don't understand that. If it was somewhere around 8, I would definitely be leaning in that direction just because they were the team that didn't look as good out of these two in their previous game, but also Purdue is just the better team here, man. And the line is telling you that. The line looks quite high for a game that's between two top 10 ranked teams, but there is that much separation between these two teams. There is a gap in some of these power ratings here in college basketball. So Purdue is definitely very good. Even though, of course, we saw that ridiculous early exit from the tournament last year. Purdue's got a lot of returning guys from that team. I think they got something to prove this season, though, but we'll see about that. Moving to let's go to the NBA here. Huge NBA slate, a full card here, but got to really narrow the focus here. There isn't really that much that I love in the NBA. There are a few games that I kind of narrowed my focus on, and a lot of it is focused on potentially going against the teams that were in that ridiculous game last night. So I am fading one of the two, and I'll talk about the other team now, which is the team I'm not going to be fading. So you'll know which game I'm on. But the Nuggets won at Golden State last night, and the Nuggets were down, I think, 19 or something like that, somewhere around 20 with maybe it was 18 with 6 minutes left in the game. I just stopped paying attention. Sometimes in the NBA, these teams go on these crazy runs. Denver came all the way back, and then they won on a buzzer beater 3 from Jokic right at the end. It was just ridiculous. The game was tied at the point where he fired that. So I guess he just figured, well, there's no time left. I'll take a shot at least. Just crazy. Absolutely ridiculous comeback for the Nuggets. And that was last night. And now the Nuggets have to return home. They were facing the Orlando Magic. The Nuggets are down from 10.5 to 9.5 is a pretty big favorite. Magic, 60% of the tickets and 89% of the cash on them. So I do lean to the Magic because the Nuggets are on the back-to-back and having to travel back into elevation. But, of course, this is the Nuggets' home court, so they are used to playing in that elevation. But they are off that huge comeback to a big game, even though the Golden State Warriors don't have a very good record this year, and I think they're still being overvalued because of their name, which we'll talk about in a second. Oh, you know where I'm going here. But still a big game when you beat the Golden State Warriors. There's still a stacked team that their name carries a lot of weight, and the Nuggets had to make a furious comeback. So I don't think the Nuggets are really in a great spot here, although the Magic, I think 2 nights ago is what it was. They played that ridiculous game where they had a furious comeback against the Kings, unfortunately, because the Kings really actually destroyed the Magic in that game. And it was all because the Magic hit like 25 3-pointers or something like that. That's how the Magic were in that game at all, which is just unfortunate for me, really. The Kings totally dominated that game statistically, and the Kings wound up winning the game in 2 overtimes. So the Magic are coming off that. They did have a day off, but they're having to go from California into elevation as well. I don't like the spot for either team really that much, so just staying away from that one. I do kind of lean against the Nuggets just because they have less rest, no rest really, and because of how that game played out yesterday. I would lean also to the Portland Trailblazers a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get there with what I'm seeing in the market here. I don't love this. Dallas Mavericks down from 12 to 10.5 with juice. 72% of the tickets look like they're on the Portland Trailblazers right now, but 51% of the cash on the Mavericks. So I don't know how to. I can't really figure out why the cash discrepancy would be that heavily on the side of the Dallas Mavericks there. Doesn't totally make sense to me, although we see the line going down, but I don't know if the line moved down from the opener because that opener of 12 maybe we saw before the previous game. Maybe the line's been out for a little while. I'm not really sure what the deal is there, but I mean, this is a zigzag spot, but it's not really enough to get involved on the Portland Trailblazers for me. And the number is not really giving you that much value either because Dallas was an 11.5-point favorite in the previous game. They won by a lot. They blew out the Blazers in that game. The Mavericks had a really big field goal percentage discrepancy too, 50% to 39.1% and 43.3% from 3, 32.5% for Portland. And Portland had 22 turnovers to Dallas's 12, and they actually out-rebounded Dallas. So the turnovers and the field goal percentage discrepancy were a lot of the tale in that game, although, of course, Dallas is certainly the better team. But now we're not really getting that much value in the line here because after Dallas blew them out as an 11.5-point favorite in the prior game, also in Dallas, now the line's sitting at 10.5. When you get like a zigzag spot with a lopsided result like we saw in the first game, you want that line to move like up a little bit to give you extra value, like to react to the recency. But in the NBA, it doesn't happen that often anymore because the books know, man, they were getting crushed back in like 2014, like somewhere around that time period. They were getting crushed, especially in the NBA playoffs, by adjusting too much to what we saw last to the previous game. So now they're correcting in the other direction. They're correcting for the zigzag. So now we see like Portland come out as a slightly smaller underdog in the next game, knowing that, well, this is the zigzag. So Portland's going to be the team that can make all the adjustments because they played badly. And there were some factors in that game where they actually didn't quite play as badly as the final score looked either. Just some fluky shit going on as well with Dallas having that huge field goal discrepancy and with all the turnovers in that one. So the books know, man. So you're not really getting much value taking Portland here, even though the line is a huge line, and Dallas does have Minnesota up next. So maybe a little bit of a look ahead there, and they might just kind of overlook Portland because they beat them so easily in the previous game. So yeah, I do lean to Portland, but I don't think it's the strongest play, so I'll just stay away from that one. The market is really screwing with my eyes here, screwing with my mind. I don't understand why the Mavericks have such the big cash discrepancy in the market indicating on the Mavericks, really, which is a little bit crazy. It might be numbers guys coming in and saying, well, how are we getting like a shorter number on the Mavericks here? But I still think that the situational aspect of it, with it being a big look ahead as well, kind of lends itself to going against the Mavericks here. But I'll stay away because of what I see in the market and whatever. And then the game I'm actually on, you know what I'm on because I already talked about it. I'm fading the Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors, man, they're in a terrible spot. They're playing a third game in 4 days, although it's all at home, and a back-to-back because they played yesterday. Really bad rest spot for them, and they had a huge game last night, man. After they played a few big games in a row, man. They going back to Christmas, they played in Denver and played a pretty tough game in Denver. Only lost by 6. Came back home, lost to the Miami Heat, lost to Dallas, beat Orlando by 6. And then last night lost to Denver in that game. Golden State had that game in hand, man. They thought they were going to win. They had the huge lead, whatever it was. Like I said, 18 or 19 points with like 6 minutes left in the game. They blew the entire lead and then wound up losing on a literal buzzer beater right at the end by Jokic, right at the end there. That is a brutal way to lose, man. You have that game in hand. You're beating Denver, the returning champs, who also just beat you on Christmas. So you're kind of looking for like revenge there, too. And I think Denver's beaten them twice this year. So, the Warriors still have not been able to get to Denver this year and beat the returning champs. They're 0-3 now against them. That's a really tough way to lose. You think you have the game won, you have a big lead with not that much time left, it's over, and then you blow the entire lead and lose on a buzzer beater like that. It's going to be really tough to get back up off the mat. I would like this better if Golden State had a bigger game up next than Toronto, but even though it's just Toronto, I still don't really care that much. I think this is a bad spot for Golden State. How do you turn around and get right back up off the mat again after that game? That was on TNT. Everybody was watching. It was nationally televised. There were only 2 NBA games last night, I think, and that was one of them. Everybody saw that. The Bucks Spurs was actually a fun game to watch in the other game too. So everybody had eyes on that game. It was a big game. Just really going to be difficult to turn around right away and play again against the Detroit Pistons, whom we know are notoriously they're setting like records for being a historically bad team this year. Of course, most notably, they set the record for the longest loss streak in the middle of a season. They actually were 2-1 at one point this season, and then a little bit later, they're 2-29. They lost 28 straight games. They finally beat Toronto a couple games ago. Then they went on the road. They've been on the road since that win, basically, and they've lost both games on the road. And they almost had Utah in their previous game, but lost in overtime. So I don't necessarily love going against a team that played into overtime, but it's not like that was a huge game really or anything because it was in Utah. It was in elevation, but now they get to come out of elevation at least. Detroit, man, I think they're trying to win these games really. So I think you're going to still get effort from Detroit. They're just not a very good team, but they're coming off another loss. They get to go in and play a Golden State Warrior team that their name carries a lot of weight, and they're a team that isn't as good as what they have been in the past. So I think Detroit, they could step it up for this game, man. It is still the Golden State Warriors. I think they'll be focused on this. They've lost 2 in a row now on the road. They probably want to salvage one game on the road trip, and they do have Denver looming on the horizon, but I don't think that's going to be – I don't think you look ahead to anybody when you're a 3-31 team. I think your thought might be that, well, if we're going to win one game on the road trip at this point because we couldn't beat Houston or Utah, it's going to be Golden State and not Denver. So Detroit might be focused on Golden State here. They might step it up for this game. They might step it up for both of these games. Who knows? But as I mentioned, this is about Golden State being in such a horrific spot, but hopefully we bring back some of the magic, not the Orlando magic, but the magic that I had last year. I'm playing the Pistons. This year, it hasn't been as good. I think I've only played them once or twice, and the last time I played them was during their loss streak, and they missed the cover by 1 point. Let's get it done this time, man. The Warriors are up from 9.5 to 10. 72% of the tickets on them, but 57% of the cash on them. The Warriors are still being lined like they're like one of those name teams, which I don't think they are anymore. Their stars are kind of old now. I think Draymond Green is he still suspended? I don't even know. I don't know what's going on there, but they're not the same Warrior team that we remember from like the championship years and whatever. They're not quite the same team. I think they can be beaten. They can be covered against at least. The market looks like the Warriors are still the public team, even though they're laying such a huge number in such a bad spot on this. In this game, they're still a public team, and the cash discrepancy is more on the Detroit Pistons. So please help me. I'm taking the Detroit Pistons plus 10. I'm doing it. I can't help myself. The Warriors, I think, are in the worst spot on the board. That's the only NBA play. That's what I'm doing. And we got a short hockey card, but there is one situation that I like in hockey as well. In one of the earlier 2 games in Carolina, Washington, I'm going to be on the Washington Capitals at plus 145 on the money line. And I think that might be the same money line I was on with Washington against Pittsburgh a couple games ago. So hopefully that's a sign or something, man, that Washington will do it again and win again as a money line underdog of the exact same price that I had them in the other game. Let's go, man. Let's do it. So this is about fading Carolina, though. Carolina, they're sitting at a minus 169 money line favorite. I saw it at 167 a little while ago, but 169 right now, which is also looks like we're open. They have 95% of the tickets and 99% of the cash, which again, pregame with these early hockey percentages, I don't totally buy that. I think certainly they're going to be the public team. Everybody's going to want Carolina versus Washington here. I mean, Carolina, people saw what they did last year. They're a playoff team. They have a better record than Washington. People want Carolina and not Washington here, but I think it's a little bit of a bigger game for Washington, though, for one thing, because Washington's in the same division and they're sitting at 4 points behind Carolina. Carolina in second place in the division now, and Washington certainly behind that. Carolina, I don't think they're in a very good spot here. They've been playing pretty well. They've won 4 games in a row, so maybe we're not going to really get much value on a team that's playing really well recently and has won 4 in a row. But they beat Nashville, which Nashville's okay. They beat Montreal. Nobody cares about that. Then they went on the road and they beat Toronto. That's a nice win, pretty big win. And then 3 days ago, they beat the New York Rangers 6-1, man. And they've been sitting around since then, and they have one more road game now going down to Washington with 2 days off. I'd like this a little better if they had a bigger game up next, which they don't. They have St. Louis, but I think they've just been sitting around basking in that. When you have a blowout win over one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference and the New York Rangers, you're going to be sitting pretty high and mighty there on yourselves. You beat New York. You beat the New York Rangers 6-1 on their own ice, and I've just been sitting around for a couple days. And having a couple days off might break that winning momentum that you've had too. So I don't think it's a good spot for Carolina. I don't like it. I don't like it at all, really. They got Washington coming in, which, yeah, it's a divisional opponent, but I think Washington's going to be more focused on this than Carolina is. Carolina coming off 2 big wins, and nothing gets bigger than just absolutely embarrassing the New York Rangers, who are leading your division on their own ice. That's a huge win for Carolina. Washington is kind of near the bottom of the division right now, even though there's kind of a cluster there where the teams aren't separated by that much. But even so, Washington, after they beat Pittsburgh, they had to play a back-to-back, and they lost to New Jersey 2 days ago and lost pretty badly, 6-3. I don't know if you can blame them for that loss. They're coming off a pretty big win over Pittsburgh, where they're up 4-0 in that game and almost lost, which luckily they hung on for me. Then they played a bad game on Wednesday, so they have 1 day off. So it is true that Carolina has 1 more day of rest than Washington does here. But like I said, I think that might disrupt Carolina's winning momentum, and it might just have them sitting there thinking about that win over the Rangers for a little bit longer, which looks like a really good win. You got Washington. Washington has also played a couple of the same teams that Carolina just played and lost them. So Washington lost 5-1 to the Rangers back on the 27th at New York, and they lost to Nashville at home in a shootout 3-2 on the 30th. So the bettors might be coming in and looking at some of those recent results and saying, well, of course Carolina is going to win this game. The only thing, Carolina's. It is definitely true that Carolina's the better team. I just don't think they're in a good spot, and we're getting Washington as a nice underdog price here. But we saw that Washington lost to 2 of the teams that Carolina just beat, although Washington did go into Carolina and beat them in a shootout on the 17th. So is that going to focus Carolina a little bit because they know that the last time they played Washington came into their building and beat them? It gives me a little bit of hesitation, but I don't know, man. When you're coming off beating the New York Rangers like that, I think it's a letdown spot. It's a tough spot to be in. So I'm still going to be on the Washington Capitals here. And Washington coming off a pretty ugly loss a couple days ago to New Jersey, but that was actually closer than it looks. Washington was the more physical team. They out-hit them, which Washington tends to be more of that style of team. Washington actually came back from a 2-goal deficit in the second period to tie the game at 3 late in the second period, and then they wound up losing 6-3, but that was a much closer game than it looks coming down the stretch there. They did lose the face-off percentage. They only lost the shot battle by 2. They lost the face-off percentage by a bit to New Jersey, but it wasn't a game that statistically played like a 6-3 loss, really. So I think we might be getting more value on Washington because that loss looks a little bit uglier than it actually was. That was a 3-3 game in the final minute of the second period. So we'll see what happens here, but I'm on the Washington Capitals plus 145. And in the NBA, I'm on the Detroit Pistons plus 10. Those are my only plays of the day. Here we got to start turning it around, man. It's been bad recently. I'm not totally excited about these two plays, but that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm on. Have a good day, man. Happy Friday. Have a good start to the weekend. Let's do it. Let's have a good start to this weekend here. Peace.